I'm Marcus, 36 years old, and I never thought I'd be writing this. But after months of sleepless nights and endless guilt, I need to know if I did the right thing. This story is going to be long, but I need to get it all out there because the context matters. Every single detail matters. 3 years ago, I adopted my son Tyler when he was just 4 years old. He'd been in foster care since he was a baby, bouncing between homes like a pinball, and when I met him at the adoption agency, something just clicked. This kid with his messy brown hair, gap-toothed smile, and the way he immediately asked if I liked dinosaurs, he stole my heart instantly. I knew right then that he was meant to be my son. The adoption process was long and exhausting, filled with paperwork, home visits, background checks, and court appearances that seemed to drag on forever. But Tyler made it all worth it. He's the brightest, most curious kid you've ever met. He asks a million questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? How do airplanes stay up? What happens to butterflies in winter? He loves building Legos, creating elaborate dinosaur habitats in our backyard, and has this infectious laugh that fills our house with joy. Every night when I tuck him in, he tells me he loves me to the moon and back times infinity. And honestly, that makes every struggle worth it. But not everyone in my family shared my joy. My parents, Richard and Margaret, live in Portland, Oregon, about an hour from my place in Beaverton. When I first told them about my decision to adopt, their reaction was lukewarm at best. Why don't you just wait and have your own kids naturally? My mom asked, her voice tinged with disappointment. My dad was even more direct. It's not the same as having your own blood, Marcus. You'll understand when you have real children. Those words cut deep, like a knife to the chest, but I hope they'd change their minds once they met Tyler. I thought maybe they were just old-fashioned, that they'd come around once they saw what an amazing kid he was. I spent weeks preparing Tyler for meeting his new grandparents, telling him stories about them, showing him photo albums from my childhood. I was wrong. The first time I brought Tyler to meet them, he was so excited. He'd practiced saying, "Hello, Grandma," and "Hello, Grandpa" in the car. And he'd brought a drawing he'd made especially for them, a family portrait with stick figures labeled with everyone's names. When we walked up to their front door, he was practically bouncing with anticipation. My parents were polite, but distant. They patted his head awkwardly, asked him basic questions about his age and what he liked to do. But there was no warmth there, no genuine interest. Tyler presented his drawing with such pride, explaining each figure, and my mother glanced at it for maybe 3 seconds before saying, "That's very nice, dear," and setting it aside on the coffee table where it was forgotten for the rest of the visit. Meanwhile, my sister Jessica's kids, Emma, 8, and Noah, 6, were treated like absolute royalty whenever they visited. Grandpa Richard would spend hours playing catch with Noah in the backyard, teaching him about cars and taking him on special fishing trips to the coast. Grandma Margaret would bake Emma's favorite chocolate chip cookies from scratch, read her endless stories, and shower her with praise for every little drawing or craft project she made. Their artwork got places of honor on the refrigerator, while Tyler's drawing ended up in a drawer somewhere. Tyler would watch from the sidelines, trying to join in, but my parents would barely acknowledge him. When he'd run up excitedly to show them a Lego creation he'd built, they'd give it a quick glance and say, "That's nice, dear," before turning their attention back to Emma and Noah. When he'd try to join in games, they'd somehow forget to include him or make excuses about why he couldn't participate. I started making excuses to avoid family gatherings. It hurt too much to watch Tyler's face fall when his grandparents ignored him, and I couldn't bear to see him trying so hard for their approval. He'd spend the entire car ride home asking what he'd done wrong, why Grandma and Grandpa didn't seem to like him as much as Emma and Noah. "Maybe if I was better at drawing," he'd say, or "maybe if I learned to throw a ball like Noah." It broke my heart every single time. But here's where it gets complicated. About 2 years ago, my parents hit hard times financially. Dad had been working as a supervisor at a manufacturing plant for 20 years when the company downsized and let him go. He was 62, with limited computer skills and a high school education, making him essentially unemployable in today's market. Mom, who worked part-time as a receptionist at a dental office, saw her hours cut dramatically when the practice merged with a larger corporation. They were both in their early 60s, and finding new employment proved nearly impossible. The bills started piling up. Their health insurance premiums skyrocketed. Dad needed medication for his diabetes that cost hundreds of dollars a month. Mom's arthritis required physical therapy that their reduced insurance barely covered. They were drowning. They came to me for help, showing up at my door one evening looking defeated and desperate. The mortgage on their house, the house where Jessica and I grew up, filled with childhood memories, was $1,800 a month. Without their combined income, they couldn't make the payments. They were facing foreclosure within 6 months. "Marcus," my mother said, tears in her eyes, "we don't know what else to do. The bank won't work with us. We've applied for assistance programs, but we make just enough from unemployment to not qualify for help, but not enough to actually live on. Being the successful child, I work as a software engineer for Nike, making good money. I felt obligated to help. Against my better judgment, I agreed to pay their mortgage each month. It wasn't easy. That's a significant chunk of my salary, money that could have gone toward Tyler's college fund or our own savings. But they were family, and I couldn't bear the thought of them losing their home. It's just temporary, my father assured me, just until we get back on our feet. For almost 2 years, I faithfully transferred that money every month. $1,800 for the mortgage, plus another $300 to $400 for utilities when they couldn't cover those either. Sometimes groceries when things got really tight. I covered their car insurance when Dad's unemployment ran out. I paid for Mom's prescription medications when they couldn't afford them. It probably totaled around $35,000 over those 2 years. Money I could have used for Tyler's education, for family vacations, for our future. And through all of this, their treatment of Tyler never improved. If anything, it got worse. They seemed to resent that I was prioritizing Tyler's needs alongside theirs. When I mentioned that I couldn't increase their monthly allowance because Tyler needed new school clothes, my mother would make passive-aggressive comments about putting strangers before family. When I had to miss a family dinner because Tyler had a soccer game, my father would grumble about my misplaced priorities. The subtle digs continued. I don't know why you're wasting money on all those extracurricular activities, my mother would say when Tyler mentioned his art classes or soccer team. Jessica never needed all that when Emma and Noah were his age. But Emma and Noah got violin lessons, dance classes, expensive summer camps, and whatever else they wanted. The double standard was glaring, but I tried to ignore it for the sake of family harmony. The breaking point came 3 months ago. It was a Saturday in early spring, and I had an emergency at work. A major system crash that affected our entire network and required all hands on deck. Tyler was supposed to spend the day with me. We'd planned to go to the zoo and then see a movie. But I couldn't take him to the office, and the security protocols wouldn't allow children in the building during crisis mode. Jessica was out of town with her family on a ski trip to Mount Hood, and I was desperate for childcare. My usual babysitter was sick, and the backup sitter was unavailable. I was running out of options. Reluctantly, I called my parents. Would you mind watching Tyler for the day? I know it's last minute, but I really need the help. This is a major emergency at work. My mom sighed dramatically, like I was asking her to climb Mount Everest. Marcus, you know we're not as young as we used to be. Watching a 7-year-old all day is exhausting. Please, Mom. I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice. I'll pay you for babysitting if that helps. Fine, she said finally. Bring him over, but he'll have to behave himself. We're not running a daycare here. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have found someone else, even if it meant missing work and disappointing my team. But I was stressed and running out of options. And foolishly, I still believed my parents would treat Tyler with basic decency. I dropped Tyler off that morning with his backpack full of toys, books, and snacks. I'd packed enough activities to keep 3 kids busy for a week. He had his dinosaur figurines, several Lego sets, coloring books, chapter books for quiet time, and his Nintendo Switch for when he got bored. He was excited. Despite everything, he still hoped for his grandparents' love and approval. Maybe Grandpa will want to see my new dinosaur book, he said hopefully as we walked up to their front door. It has a T-Rex that's bigger than a school bus. Maybe he will, buddy, I said, though my gut was telling me otherwise. I told my parents I'd be back by evening, probably around 6 p.m., and they assured me everything would be fine. Don't worry about us, my father said, barely looking up from his newspaper. We'll manage. The system crash turned out to be more complex than anticipated. What should have been a 6-hour day turned into 12 hours of intensive troubleshooting. We were dealing with corrupted databases, failed backups, and angry clients calling every 15 minutes demanding updates. I texted my parents around lunchtime to let them know I'd be later than expected, and my mother texted back a curt, "Fine." By the time we got everything running smoothly, it was nearly 9 p.m. I was exhausted, stressed, and feeling guilty for being so late. I'd texted my parents several more times throughout the day, but only received short, dismissive responses. I raced to my parents' house, feeling guilty for being so late. I expected to find Tyler asleep on their couch, maybe after a day of watching movies or playing quietly with his toys in their living room. Instead, I found their front door unlocked and could hear raised voices from inside. "I told you to scrub that pot properly. Look, there's still food stuck on it." My blood ran cold. That was my mother's voice, and she sounded furious. "Hurry up. Your cousins never take this long to clean up after themselves." I pushed open the door and followed the voices to the kitchen. What I saw will haunt me forever. Tyler, my 7-year-old son, was standing on a step stool at the sink, his sleeves rolled up, scrubbing a large pot that was clearly too heavy for him to handle properly. His face was red and streaked with tears, and his hands were raw from the hot water and harsh dish soap. The water was so hot that steam was rising from the sink, and I could see red marks on his little arms where the water had splashed. My mother stood behind him, arms crossed, looking irritated and impatient. You're taking too long. Emma could have finished this an hour ago. Maybe if you put some effort into it instead of crying like a baby. On the kitchen table, I could see the remnants of what looked like a big family dinner. Multiple plates, glasses, serving dishes, pots, pans, and utensils. All of it dirty. All of it apparently Tyler's responsibility to clean. There had to be at least 20 pieces of dishware, far more than 3 people would use for a simple lunch. Meanwhile, through the archway to the living room, I could see my father watching TV, completely unbothered by the scene in the kitchen. He had his feet up on the coffee table, a beer in his hand, watching some old Western movie like nothing was happening. Tyler's toys were nowhere to be seen. His backpack sat by the front door, unopened. The activities I'd packed for him, the books, the Legos, the games, all ignored. What the hell is going on here? I shouted. Tyler spun around, and when he saw me, he immediately started crying harder. Daddy, I'm trying to be good, I promise. I'm trying to wash everything right, but my hands hurt, and the pot is too heavy, and I keep dropping things. He jumped down from the stool and ran to me, his wet hands soaking my shirt as he hugged me tight. I could feel him trembling against me, and his hands were pruned and red from being in hot water for hours. My mother didn't even look ashamed. Oh, Marcus, you're back. Tyler was just helping clean up after dinner. We thought it would be good for him to learn some responsibility. Responsibility? I looked at the mountain of dishes, then at my exhausted, tear-stained son. He's 7 years old. Where are Emma and Noah? They're not here, she said dismissively. This is just from our meals today. Tyler needed to earn his keep. Earn his keep. Those words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, earn his keep? What meals? You fed him lunch and dinner, and then made him clean up everything? Well, yes. We're not running a hotel here, Marcus. Jessica's children always help when they stay over. That was a blatant lie. I'd never once seen Emma or Noah wash so much as a spoon at my parents' house. Are you insane? I picked up Tyler, who was still sobbing against my shoulder. He's a child, not your personal servant. My father finally emerged from the living room, looking annoyed at the commotion. What's all the yelling about? We're trying to watch TV in here. What's the yelling about? I was shaking with rage. You had my 7-year-old son doing dishes for hours while you watched TV. Look at his hands, they're red and raw. Dad shrugged, as if he couldn't understand why I was upset. He's old enough to help out. Jessica's kids always help when they're here. That's a lie, I snapped. Emma and Noah have never washed a single dish in this house, and you know it. You treat them like little princes and princess while you have Tyler scrubbing pots like Cinderella. Now you're being dramatic, Mom said. It's good for him to learn that he can't just expect everything to be handed to him. He's not really our. Not really your what? I interrupted, my voice dangerously low. She stopped, realizing what she was about to say, but the damage was done. Not really your grandson? I finished for her. Is that what you were going to say? The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler had stopped crying and was listening to every word, his little face pressed against my neck. That's what this is about, isn't it? I continued. He'll never be good enough for you because he's adopted, because he doesn't share your precious DNA. Well, let me make something crystal clear. Tyler is my son. He's your grandson, whether you like it or not. And if you can't accept that, if you can't love him the way he deserves to be loved, then you don't deserve to be in his life. Marcus, calm down, Dad said. You're overreacting. It was just some dishes. Just some dishes. I looked at Tyler's raw hands again, at his tear-stained cheeks. You humiliated him. You made him feel worthless. You treated him like hired help while you sat in your living room watching TV. This isn't about dishes. This is about the fact that you've never accepted him as part of this family. We do accept him, my mother protested weakly. We just think he should learn to be useful. It's not our fault he's not as capable as Emma and Noah. Not as capable. A 7-year-old wasn't as capable as older children at washing dishes designed for adults. The absurdity of her statement was staggering. I grabbed Tyler's backpack and headed for the door. Where are you going? Mom called after me. Home, I said without turning around. And don't expect us back. Marcus, you're being ridiculous, she shouted. Come back here and stop acting like a child. But I was already at my car, buckling Tyler into his car seat with hands that were shaking with rage. The car ride home was quiet. Tyler had exhausted himself crying and fell asleep in his car seat within minutes. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, my heart breaking all over again. Every few minutes he'd whimper in his sleep, and I wondered what kind of day he'd had before I arrived. When we got home, I carried him inside and up to his room. As I was changing him into his pajamas, I noticed his shirt was soaked with sweat and dishwater, and there were small cuts on his hands from handling sharp utensils and broken dishes. How many plates had he dropped? How many times had my parents yelled at him? As I was tucking him in, he opened his eyes and looked at me with such sadness. Daddy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me like they love Emma and Noah? I had to turn away so he wouldn't see me crying. Baby, that's not about you. That's about them. You are the most lovable, wonderful kid in the world. They're missing out on knowing how amazing you are. Did I do something wrong? I tried really hard to clean the dishes good, but they were so heavy and the water was really hot and I kept dropping things. Grandma said I was clumsy and that Emma never breaks things. No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. Why did they make me wash dishes all day? I wanted to play with my dinosaurs, but Grandma said I had to earn the right to play. I never earned it. The more details he shared, the angrier I became. They'd essentially held his toys hostage, using them as leverage to force him into unpaid child labor. Are Grandma and Grandpa going to be mad at you because I couldn't wash the dishes right? No, baby. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. That night, after Tyler was asleep, I sat in my kitchen with a beer and made a decision. I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfer to my parents' mortgage account. Then I called their utility companies and removed myself as an authorized payer. I also canceled the supplemental health insurance policy I'd been paying for them. If they wanted to treat my son like garbage, they could figure out their own financial problems. I didn't tell them immediately. I wanted them to discover it on their own, to feel that moment of panic when they realized their safety net was gone. Over the next few days, I focused on helping Tyler process what had happened. He was quieter than usual, more clingy, and had started having nightmares about being trapped in a kitchen with dishes that kept multiplying. I made an appointment with a child psychologist to help him work through the trauma. The call came 2 weeks later. Dad's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. Marcus, the bank called. They said our mortgage payment bounced. What's going on? I stopped paying it, I said simply. What do you mean you stopped paying it? I mean I'm no longer giving you money. Figure it out yourselves. There was a long pause. Son, you can't be serious. We'll lose the house. You should have thought about that before you humiliated Tyler. This is about the dishes? Marcus, you're being ridiculous. We were just trying to teach him some responsibility. No, I said. This is about 24 months of watching you treat my son like he's less than your other grandchildren. This is about you making him feel unwanted and unloved. This is about you thinking that because he's adopted, he somehow doesn't deserve the same love and respect you show Emma and Noah. My mother grabbed the phone. Marcus, please. We're sorry about what happened, but you can't leave us homeless over this. We don't have jobs. We're in our 60s. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, Mom, but it's not my problem anymore. He's not even your real son, she screamed. Why are you choosing some random kid over your own parents? That did it. Any lingering doubt I had about my decision evaporated in that moment. He is my real son, I said quietly. He's more real to me than you've ever been. Don't call me again. I hung up and blocked their numbers. Jessica called the next day, absolutely livid. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? They're going to lose everything because of your temper tantrum. It's not a temper tantrum, Jess. They treated Tyler like garbage. They made him do hours of manual labor while you and your family were off enjoying yourselves at Mount Hood. They called him names, made him cry, and then acted like it was no big deal. So what? Sometimes kids need to do chores. Emma and Noah do chores too. Do they? When was the last time you saw Emma scrubbing pots at Mom and Dad's house while you sat in the living room watching TV? When has Noah ever spent an entire day washing dishes with water so hot it burned his hands? Silence. That's what I thought. Look, Jessica, if you're so concerned about Mom and Dad, you help them. I'm done. I can't afford their mortgage. I have my own family to worry about. And I have mine. Tyler is my priority now, not people who treat him like hired help. They're your parents, Marcus, your own flesh and blood. And Tyler is my son. My choice is made. The foreclosure process moved quickly. Within 3 months, my parents' house was sold at auction. They had to move into a tiny apartment on the other side of town. Jessica helped them move and has been giving them some financial assistance, but it's nowhere near what I was providing. I've heard through mutual friends that they're struggling. Dad found a part-time job at a hardware store, but it barely covers their rent. Mom has been applying everywhere, but hasn't found steady work. They've had to sell most of their furniture and a lot of their belongings. Their health issues have worsened due to stress, and they can barely afford their medications now. Part of me feels guilty. These are my parents, after all. I spent my childhood in that house. I have good memories there, even if recent years have been difficult. But then, I look at Tyler, and my resolve strengthens. Since that awful day at my parents' house, he's been slowly returning to his normal, happy self. He doesn't ask about Grandma and Grandpa anymore. He's made friends at school, joined the soccer team, and his confidence has been growing every day. The child psychologist has been helping him work through his feelings about that day. She's taught him coping strategies for when he feels overwhelmed or rejected. Slowly, his nightmares have stopped, and he started playing with his toys again without looking over his shoulder for approval. Last week, he brought home a drawing he made at school. It showed our family, him and me, standing in front of our house with our dog Max. At the bottom, in his careful 7-year-old handwriting, he'd written, "My happy family." No grandparents in the picture. Just us. When I asked him about it, he shrugged. I drew the people who love me, he said matter-of-factly. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. Yesterday, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I realized my parents had gotten a new phone. Marcus, this is your father. Your mother is in the hospital. She had a heart attack. I thought you should know. My first instinct was to rush to the hospital, to be there for them despite everything that had happened. But then I remembered Tyler's raw hands, his tears, his broken voice asking why his grandparents didn't love him. I texted back, I hope she recovers, but we won't be visiting. I told Tyler about his grandmother being sick, and his reaction surprised me. He got quiet for a moment, then looked up at me with those big, serious eyes. Daddy, I hope Grandma gets better. Even though she was mean to me, I don't want her to be sick. The capacity for forgiveness in this kid amazes me every day. He has such a pure heart, despite everything he's been through. How could my parents not see what an incredible human being he is? Jessica texted me later that evening, furious that I hadn't come to the hospital. Mom could have died, and you couldn't even be bothered to show up. What kind of son are you? The kind who protects his child from people who hurt him, I replied. The truth is, I don't regret my decision. Not for a second. My parents made their choice when they decided Tyler wasn't worthy of their love. They chose to treat him like a second-class citizen, like he was somehow less deserving of kindness and respect because he didn't share their DNA. Well, I made my choice too. I chose Tyler. I chose to prioritize his well-being and happiness over maintaining a relationship with people who couldn't accept him. Some people might say I went too far, that cutting off financial support was cruel, that I should have just stopped bringing Tyler around but continued helping my parents financially. But here's the thing. Money talks. For 2 years, I was essentially paying my parents to treat my son like garbage. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill I covered was enabling their behavior. It was telling them that their treatment of Tyler had no real consequences. I needed to show them that actions have consequences. That if they wanted to exclude Tyler from the family, then they were excluding me too. And if they were excluding me, then they couldn't expect me to bankroll their lifestyle. Was it harsh? Maybe. But sometimes harsh lessons are the only ones that get through to people. I've been thinking a lot about what family really means. DNA doesn't make someone family. Love does. Commitment does. Showing up for each other, protecting each other, putting each other's needs first. That's what family is. Tyler is my family. He's my son in every way that matters. He came into my life and changed everything for the better. He made me a father, gave my life purpose and meaning I never knew I was missing. My parents, they're related to me by blood, but they've shown me that blood doesn't automatically make someone family. Family is earned through love, through loyalty, through treating each other with respect and kindness. They failed that test. They chose to see Tyler as less than, as unworthy of their love. In doing so, they chose to lose both of us. I won't lie. There are nights when I lie awake, wondering if I was too harsh. When I think about them struggling in their tiny apartment, eating ramen noodles for dinner because they can't afford much else. When I remember how proud Dad was of that house, how Mom loved her garden in the backyard. But then morning comes and Tyler bounds into my room with his messy hair and bright smile, chattering excitedly about something he learned at school or a game he wants to play. And I remember what this is all about. It's about protecting this incredible kid who calls me Dad, who trusts me to keep him safe, who loves me to the moon and back, times infinity. It's about showing him that he matters, that he's worth fighting for, that I will always choose him over anyone who tries to make him feel small. My parents had almost 3 years to accept Tyler, to love him, to treat him like the gift he is. Instead, they spent those years making him feel unwelcome, unwanted, and unloved. They had countless opportunities to be better grandparents, and they squandered every single one. The day they made Tyler wash dishes while treating him like an unpaid servant was just the final straw. It was the culmination of years of subtle rejection and discrimination, and I decided I'd had enough. Some people say I should forgive them, that they're old and set in their ways, that they might change given time. But forgiveness isn't the same as enabling bad behavior. Forgiveness doesn't mean I have to continue subjecting Tyler to their treatment. Forgiveness doesn't mean I have to pay their bills while they hurt my child. I can forgive them for their ignorance and prejudice, but I don't have to fund it. Tyler is thriving now. He's confident, happy, and secure in the knowledge that he's loved unconditionally. He doesn't flinch when adults raise their voices anymore. He doesn't try to make himself smaller to avoid disappointing people. He's just a regular 7-year-old kid who knows his dad loves him more than anything in the world. That's worth more to me than any relationship with people who can't see his worth. So no, I don't regret cutting off my parents financially. I don't regret choosing Tyler over them. I don't regret protecting my son from people who made him feel unloved and unwanted. The only thing I regret is waiting so long to do it. Every night when I tuck Tyler into bed and he tells me he loves me, I'm reminded that I made the right choice. He's my family. He's my world, and I will always, always choose him. But I keep wondering, am I wrong for essentially making my parents homeless over this? Some days the guilt eats at me. Other days, I remember Tyler's tears and know I did what any good father would do. Am I the asshole for cutting off financial support to my parents after they mistreated my adopted son? I honestly don't know anymore. Edit. Thank you for all the comments and support. A few people have asked about Tyler's biological parents, and while I won't go into too much detail for privacy reasons, I will say that they were very young when he was born and weren't able to care for him. The adoption was handled through the state, and it was finalized when Tyler was 4. He knows he's adopted. We've always been open about it, and he's okay with it. He sometimes asks questions, but mostly he's just happy to be part of our little family. Edit 2. Someone asked if my parents have tried to reach out since my mother's heart attack. They haven't, at least not directly. Jessica says they're both struggling with pride and stubbornness, and they still don't think they did anything wrong. Honestly, that just confirms to me that I made the right decision. If they can't even acknowledge that they hurt Tyler, then nothing has really changed. Edit 3. A few people have criticized me for not giving Tyler real grandparents by cutting off my parents. But here's the thing. They were never real grandparents to him. Real grandparents love their grandchildren unconditionally. Real grandparents don't make 7-year-olds scrub pots while other kids play. Tyler deserves better than people who treat him as less than. And honestly, he has better. He has teachers, neighbors, my close friends who all treat him with the love and respect he deserves. Family isn't always about blood relations. Edit 4. Several people have asked about the specifics of what happened that day, and I've been hesitant to share more details because they're honestly hard for me to think about. But Tyler's therapist says it might be helpful for me to process it, so here goes. When I pieced together Tyler's day from what he told me later, it was even worse than I initially thought. My parents had him wake up at 6 a.m. to help with breakfast, which meant he made toast and cleaned up after them while they sat at the table. Then they had him vacuum the living room because he might as well make himself useful. Lunch was similar. He prepared simple sandwiches for all 3 of them, then cleaned up alone while they watched TV. When he asked to play with his toys, they told him he could earn playtime by washing the dinner dishes. But dinner turned into this elaborate meal with multiple courses and dishes, clearly designed to create more work for him. He never did get to play with his toys. By the time I arrived, he'd been doing household labor for nearly 12 hours with minimal breaks. I still get angry thinking about it. Edit 5. I want to address some of the people saying I abandoned my elderly parents. First, they're not elderly. They're in their early 60s. Second, I supported them financially for 2 years, which was more than generous considering they never asked Jessica to contribute a single dollar. Third, and most importantly, they had a choice. They could have treated Tyler with basic human decency and continued receiving my help, or they could treat him like garbage and lose my support. They chose their path. I'm just living with the consequences of their choices. Edit 6. For those asking about Tyler's current state, he's doing amazing. His therapist says he's remarkably resilient, which I think speaks to his character and strength. He's made friends at school, loves his soccer team, and has started taking piano lessons, his choice. He recently told me he wants to be a paleontologist when he grows up, and we've been visiting museums and reading books about dinosaurs together. He's happy, healthy, and loved. Exactly what every child deserves. Final edit. This blew up more than I expected, and I can't respond to every comment, but I want to thank everyone who shared their own adoption stories and experiences with family rejection. It's heartbreaking how common this is, but it's also inspiring to see how many people have chosen love over blood relations when it mattered. For those asking about updates, Tyler and I are doing great. We're planning a camping trip next weekend to look for fossils, and he's excited to show me how much his wilderness skills have improved since joining Boy Scouts. That's the kind of thing real family does together. My parents missed out on all of this because they couldn't see past their prejudices. Their loss. Take care, everyone.